The image that's been portrayed is we sat around the campfire and said, oh boy, now we go get to torture people. Well, we don't torture people. Let me say that again to you. We don't torture people. Okay?
Come on, George.
We don't torture people.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
We don't torture people.
Waterboarding.
We do not. I don't talk about techniques, and we don't torture people. Now listen to me. I want you to listen to me. So the context is it's post 9/11. I've got reports of nuclear weapons in New York City, apartment buildings that are going to be blown up, planes that are going to fly into airports all over again, plot lines that I don't know. I don't know what's going on inside the United States, and I'm struggling to find out where the next disaster is going to occur. Everybody forgets one central context of what we lived through. The palpable fear that we felt on the basis of the fact that there was so much we did not know.
On September 17, 2001, President Bush gave the CIA broad powers to interrogate prisoners, but the CIA does not have many officers trained in interrogation. As a result, in late 2001 and early 2002, while the CIA waits for high-ranking al-Qaeda leaders to be captured, senior CIA officials began investigating which interrogation procedures to use, according to the New York Times, dated September 10, 2006. The CIA constructs its program in a new harried months by consulting Egypt and Saudi intelligence officials and copying Soviet interrogation methods long used in training American servicemen to withstand capture. Both Egypt and Saudi Arabia are notorious for their brutal and widespread use of torture. The Soviet interrogation techniques mentioned were designed not to get valuable intelligence, but to generate propaganda by getting captured U.S. soldiers to make statements denouncing the United States. The CIA hires two psychologists willing to use these techniques, James Elmer Mitchell and Bruce Jessen. Even though the two have never conducted any real-world interrogations, and there is no evidence at the time that the Soviet torture techniques are effective in obtaining valuable intelligence and not just false confessions. In mid-March of 2002, the CIA will draw up a list of 10 permissible aggressive interrogation techniques based on the advice from the governments of Saudi Arabia and Egypt and U.S. psychologists. A CIA officer known as Richard Blee, who was the CIA station of Kabul, Afghanistan, objects to the FBI interviewing high-ranking al-Qaeda detainee Ibn Sheikh al-Libi. The FBI obtained access to al-Libi after he was handed over to the United States and is obtaining some information about him from Zacharias Moussaoui and Richard Reed, who will be prosecuted in the United States. However, according to FBI agent Jack Clunan, for some reason, the CIA chief of Kabul in the station in Kabul is taking issue with our approach. CIA Director George Tenet learns of Richard Blee's complaints and insists that al-Libi be turned over to the CIA, which prompts him to be put on a plane to Egypt, where he is tortured and makes false statements about al-Qaeda and Iraq. By 2002, the New York Times will later report that Michael Chertoff repeatedly advises the CIA about legality of some of the aggressive interrogation procedures. Chertoff is head of the Justice Department's Criminal Division at the time and will later become the Homeland Security Secretary. Chertoff advises that the CIA can use waterboarding and that the New York Times will claim he approves of the techniques that did not involve the infliction of pain, like tricking a subject into believing he was questioned by a member of a security service from another country. It will later be reported that the CIA tricked al-Libi and Abu Zubaydah into believing he was in the custody of the Saudis, when in fact several U.S. officials were merely pretending to be Saudis. Furthermore, Chertoff seems to have been advising on the legality of techniques used against Abu Zubaydah, strengthening allegations that false flag trickery was used on him. In interviews, former senior intelligence officials said CIA lawyers went to extraordinary lengths, beginning in March of 2002, to get a clear answer from the Justice Department about which interrogation techniques were permissible in questioning Abu Zubaydah and other important detainees. Nothing that was done was not explicitly authorized. These guys were extraordinarily careful, a former senior intelligence officer said. Chertoff also approved one technique that appeared to violate a ban in the law against using a threat of imminent death. This appears to match the claims that the CIA proposed but did not implement a plan to place Abu Zubaydah into a coffin to convince him that he was about to die. Instead, they placed him in a coffin filled with bugs and left him there for the last 24 hours.